In this demonstration, I'm going to make carrot cake, but not just a standard carrot cake, it's a carrot cake with a slight addition to the skills because it's based on using the foaming property of eggs and egg whites to hold additional air. To make this recipe, you need 1 egg, 100 grams of soft brown sugar, 75 grams of soft margarine. I'm using dairy-free margarine today, and a tablespoon of water, 75 grams of wholemeal flour. That can be self-raising, but you are using baking powder anyway. Half a teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of mixed spice, tiny pinch of salt if you want. You can, if you have nobody with nut allergies, you could put some chopped walnuts in, but that is best avoided if there is a risk of anaphylactic reaction. And 15 grams of sultana. So what I've done today is kept it nut-free and basically increased the proportion of fruit. Now, so that would be putting it up to 30 grams of mixed fruit. Okay, I've not got sultanas, but I've got mixed fruit, but I've actually upped that a little bit more. So there's about 50 grams there. Okay, and 75 grams of finely grated carrot. That makes the cake. For the icing, you would need 50 grams of medium or full fat soft cheese, 50 grams of icing sugar and half a lemon to zest. So what I'm going to do today, because I'm trying to keep this dairy free, is just use icing sugar mixed with water to give an icing glaze, and then use the lemon zest. Okay, so I won't be using soft cream cheese in my recipe today, but it is the traditional icing ingredient for a carrot cake, and it gives that nice sort of tangy flavour that you may be used to if you've had carrot cake before. Now the first step is to put the oven on to preheat, so you need that on gas mark 5, electric 190. Okay, and you will need a square flapjack tin to cook it in, which is lined with baking parchment. You can cook it in a pound loaf tin, but a pound loaf tin is a much deeper tin, so that will take a longer time to cook. So by cooking it in a square flapjack tin, you're going to reduce the cooking time. Okay, once the oven's preheated, or while it's preheating, we can crack on with the recipe. So what I've got in the bowl now is the egg yolk. So I've separated the yolk and the white. So I've put the yolk in a large bowl and I've put the white into a medium bowl. And it's really important with the white, when you're separating it, that you get no impurities. So just check it for any impurities, because that will affect the whisking quality. So just set the white to one side for now, and we will concentrate on the yolk. So in this bowl is the yolk, sugar, so the 100 grams of soft brown sugar, and the 75 grams of soft margarine, which is dairy free at the moment. You can use any margarine, but soft is easier to cream. And I have in there as well 1 tablespoon of water. So the idea now is to just cream that together. So just use a mixing spoon to cream that, get the back of the spoon working the mixture against the side of the bowl until it starts to really work together nicely. So you want it nice and creamed to get rid of any of the lumps of fat. Now, soft brown sugar is quite granular. You could use caster sugar, which will give you a fine grain, so it won't be as grainy looking in appearance. Or you could use golden caster sugar, which is nearer to soft brown in terms of colour, but soft brown just has a slightly different colour and flavour. Okay, so we've creamed that, and it will look grainy as well because of the dairy-free fat, okay, that I'm using. So we've creamed that, and now we move on to the dry ingredients. So we put that to one side. In a separate bowl, you need to sieve, or you could do this onto a plate, as long as you're careful not to spill it everywhere. So I've got in here the flour and the baking powder. So 75 grams of flour, half a teaspoon of baking powder, quarter of a teaspoon of mixed spice. So they've all been sieved together. You can put a tiny pinch of salt in there as well, but I choose not to use salt when I'm cooking things like cakes. Okay. You also need to add at this point the fruit. So the mixed fruit. If you're making this, you can add nuts, but I wouldn't if you are dealing with allergies. So we generally in schools you would cook nut-free, so basically leaving nuts out. So we've got the fruit there, and we also need the carrot, which is grated. So we've got the dry ingredients all mixed, either on a plate or in a bowl. So medium bowl's fine. But you could actually use a plate to mix all of these in if you're limited for equipment and you don't have a big array of bowls available. So we just mix those. So I know it says dry ingredients and grated carrot seems fairly wet, but it's just, it classifies in this recipe as a dry ingredient. So what we've done is we've mixed the flour, the baking powder, the spice, carrots and fruit. Okay, so it's all ready to go in to our other mixture. So then we mix the two together. You could, if you're short on bowls, at this point when you've got the mixture creamed, you could just put all of these other things directly into your sugar mixture. Okay, your sugar and fat mixture, and save on washing up. So don't use an extra bowl and just mix it all in directly. Okay, so we mix that together thoroughly. Okay, make sure it's all mixed in, you haven't got any sort of dry powdery patches and so on. And then we concentrate on whisking the egg white. Now the egg white is in a separate bowl, and you just check for impurities. I can see something in there, so I'm going to just get rid of that. Okay, and use an electric whisk on a high setting, and this will get noisy. So you whisk your egg whites until they reach a peak consistency. Now what you've got here is denaturation of the protein. You can see that the egg has gone from a clear liquid, it's becoming very foamy. Okay, what you've got is it becoming very foamy. So the egg starts off as a clear but thick sort of gloopy liquid. As the beaters whisk that egg white, the protein strands, the bonds between the protein molecules break and reattach, which is why the egg changes appearance. So it actually goes from a sort of thick, gloopy, sort of clear liquid. It then changes colour, becomes foamy. Okay, and this is creating a foam with the bonds breaking and then reattaching and trapping air at the same time. So you should find with more whisking, this will become thicker. point you've reached a soft peak consistency. So you can see when I lift the beaters, it leaves a soft peak behind. So take the beaters out, making sure that you turn the electric whisk off, remove the beaters, get all of your mixture out. Okay, put those to one side and stack your washing up, and then come back to the original bowl. Now at this point, once we return to the original bowl, we're going to change from the stirring spoon, from the creaming spoon, to a tablespoon. Okay, and what that does is it allows the egg to be completely cut into the mixture. So using a spatula, scrape your egg white into the bowl. Okay, you can use the spoon if you prefer. The spoon, I find quite often the spoon is far more effective at scraping the bowl out than a spatula, unless your spatula has really got flexibility to it. So you can see that the egg white's changed completely. It's created a foam which has trapped lots of air in there, and we don't want to knock that air out. So what we now do is just fold. So we cut and fold. Okay, so using a figure of 8, a very similar method to if you've made a Swiss roll. You use a figure of 8, so that's turning the spoon, cutting through the middle and turning and folding. So we fold the mixture, make sure that you've got all of the egg white mixed in. Try and do this fairly quickly. You're not stirring because that will knock the air out. So the whole point of this recipe is using the foaming quality of the egg white to give a lighter texture to your cake. At this point now, it's ready to go into your tin. So the tin is prepared by lining with baking parchment. Okay, you can slightly grease the paper if you want to. I just do a little spray, but not really a huge amount. You should be able to actually get away with not greasing baking parchment, but I have used a bit of grease on the tin to hold it down. So now we put the mixture into the tin and spread it out. If you didn't have a square tin, you could use one Victoria sponge tin to make your cake in and do a round cake instead. Okay. So just gently spread it out. Okay, and then that gets popped into the oven. The cake is now cooked. It's come out of the oven after 15 to 20 minutes. It took nearly 20 minutes, I'd say a good 18, 19 minutes. Okay, and you put a skewer in, pull it out, and it comes out clean as one test, or you press it and it bounces back. Okay, now it's quite a moist cake because of the carrots. Now it has been put onto a heat-proof triangle. This has cooled down. It's been cooling down for about 10 minutes now. And so you use oven gloves to get it out of the oven, obviously for health and safety. So use your oven gloves to get it out. Put it onto a heat-proof triangle or heat-proof mat to protect your worktop. Allow it to cool. So that could take a good 20-30 minutes to cool, ready for icing. Okay, and then the icing that you would traditionally find on a carrot cake is a mixture of soft cream cheese and sieved icing sugar with a little bit of lemon zest sprinkled across on top. I'm not going to use cream cheese because I'm particularly making this dairy free today, but you could just leave it like this with just a slight dusting of icing sugar across the top, or you could just mix icing sugar and water, which is what I've got here, to a sort of runny paste, okay, so that it will just run across the top, and just drizzle it, okay, or you can pour it on and spread it out, so you can sort of give it a good spread. It's probably a little bit warm for it to go on really, so another 5 or 10 minutes of cooling time would be good, okay. But the cream cheese will give you a much thicker icing, but we've got a combination of dairy free and diabetic, so I'm just using the icing to stick the lemon zest to it really. A zester is useful to get lemon zest off the rind off the lemon, and then just sprinkle that across the top. Okay, so I've deliberately put that on while the cake is warm so it soaks, but it also spreads quickly, and I don't really want a very thick layer of icing. Okay, so that's done. So once it's cooled, you can take it out, take the paper off and cut it into portions. So enjoy.